Ghost Recon Wildlands is coming up soon, and there's a good fat chance that the developers will be announcing a release date for the game at E3. I've already mentioned in the past that I wanted to cover this game the same way that I'm currently covering The Division, but because of the lack of information we have so far, there really wasn't that much to talk about. You could of course say that I could have been breaking down the trailer to the tiniest bits and pieces, just as I did with The Division a few years back, but seeing how The Division differed so much from what they initially showed us in terms of, the map, the skills, the abilities, the menu, the weapons, and so on, I didn't want to fall into that same trap again and basically break down things that might have already been changed or removed when the final game comes out. But Ubisoft recently released a new video showing some more of the game and what we will be able to expect from it, and it seems that not that much has changed from what they showed last year. Now, because everyone here has played The Division and is subscribed to my channel primarily for The Division, I think it's a good idea to introduce everyone to Ghost Recon Wildlands by letting you know what to expect from this game and how it is different from The Division. Because those unfamiliar with the franchise might look at this and say, well, that looks a lot like The Division, but trust me, apart from maybe the realistic setting and the fact that they are both third-person open-world games, they literally couldn't be further apart in terms of gameplay. And that is what I want to break down for you. For this video though, I think we can actually skip most of the very basic parts. I mean, everybody knows that The Division is a cover-based shooter. We've all played the game, we've all seen footage of it. I mean, that's what I'm guessing because, you're here watching this on my channel. But I just wanted to say that Ghost Recon Wildlands will not be a cover-based shooter. And although it may look like that the player is taking cover behind some of these, these cover pieces in these clips, that's actually the player crouching on his own, because unlike with The Division, in Wildlands you will have the option to crouch freely, and you can also prone on top of that. But besides being a cover-based shooter, The Division is also an RPG, and thus the game has a lot of those RPG mechanics. Players can level up, they can get stronger with each level, they can find newer and better items, and create specific builds and roles within their 4-man squad. It is very much a stat-based game, and so are your enemies. You might be able to one-shot any NPC in a mission, but then in the next mission you will have to put a full magazine into their head before they finally go down. It all depends on the level that the player has, the level of your gear, and, the level of the NPC that you're up against. This is where Ghost Recon Wildlands will differ the most from The Division, because in Wildlands you will simply not find that same amount of player progression. Yeah, there may be a player level, I'm not saying that you cannot level up, but it will certainly not be tied to how much damage the player can deal, or take for that matter. Wildlands is actually classified as a tactical shooter as opposed to an RPG. And that means that most, if not all of the enemies you will ever encounter will all die to a single shot into the head. That isn't to say that there will not be any customization or progression for the player, however. It has already been confirmed that the developers are bringing back Gunsmith. Now, for those who don't know what it is a very extensive gun customizer that players got to play with in Ghost Recon Future Soldier. But guns aside, I'm also pretty sure that we will have plenty of other small tools and gadgets, and even vehicles available to us to take, a different approach in the way we want to kill enemies. So player progression can be found back in unlocking maybe more attachments or other vehicles, but it will not give your character more health or more damage. I believe that the map itself is also quite an important factor to the gameplay. The map The Division has is quite small in terms of raw square kilometers, but as a player you don't really notice that because the only way to traverse the map is of course on foot. Now that the map is a little bit smaller of course doesn't mean that it is not as good as, having a bigger map. To compensate for the smaller size, the whole game is packed with details and interesting things to see. And because the developers didn't have to work with vehicles, that also meant that every street in The Division has been designed with cover-to-cover gameplay in mind. You can pick almost any place in the game, and the cover-based shooting that will work. Ghost Recon Wildlands will be quite the opposite of that. Now I know that what we have seen in the trailers, we have to take it with a grain of salt. But if these trailers are any indication at all of what the game will be, it seems that the Ghost Recon Wildlands map will be quite large in terms of square kilometers, but it will also have less details and landmarks for every square kilometer that the game has. Wildlands also has vehicles, so traveling from end to end may actually take you about the same time as that it would in The Division. We've already seen all kinds of jeeps, bikes, boats, helicopters, and even a train, but you probably cannot control that one. Maybe that's just for fast travel. And looking at the map, it gives me quite a Far Cry feel, where you have these different holdouts and smaller towns all over the map that you can attack, But in between those places you have a lot of roads and forests and stuff like that. It's actually funny because according to this footage you can use the drone to tag and spot different enemy types and turrets and security objects such as lights and alarms that you have to disable if you want to take the stealth route. Really similar to what you could do in Far Cry, of course. And that's another big difference that I wanted to point out. In The Division, most of the fights are pretty straightforward. Maybe in the future some enemies will be introduced that you have to take out in a specific way, but as the game stands right now, it is mostly about having high enough statistics to deal with enemies in certain missions. I'd imagine that because there is no leveling system in Ghost Recon Wildlands, or at least not in the same way as that it is in The Division, with getting more health and damage, the difficulty of the game will be set with different outposts that require different strategies. It has been confirmed, and we see this back in the trailers as well, that there will be 9 types of different environments on this map that will all have some sort of influence on how you want to approach each outpost. There's a stealth mechanic and enemies can be killed with stealth takedowns. Again, they show this off in the trailers as well. One last thing I wanted to go over is the multiplayer, because that's also quite an important aspect to me. The Division allows you to play the whole game through with a maximum of 3 other players, together forming a 4-man squad. We know this already. And in Ghost Recon Wildlands will have that exact same policy, but the big difference is that when you do not have enough players to make a 4-man squad in Wildlands, you will get an AI player to back you up. That also means that even if you're playing alone, you will still have a 4-man squad, but you will just be playing with 3 AI characters. Now, multiplayer-wise, the Division also has a player-to-player enabled mode, which is of course the Dark Zone. You aren't directly playing a team deathmatch or a capture the flag game there, but it at least allows you to shoot and fight other players if you want to. Ghost Recon Wildlands has revealed no details or no information about this yet, and there is no word of any dedicated PvP mode so far. I'm a little bit afraid that there will be no such thing in this game. As good as Wildlands may or may not be, I think that multiplayer and PvP is quite important for the longevity of any game. And if it wasn't for the Dark Zone, I would probably not play the Division that much anymore. And I guess that those are the biggest differences between the Division and Wildlands, of course, based on what we know today. Moving into the future, I think you can expect more and more coverage of Wildlands on my channel, but I think that the videos will only really start rolling out after the E3 event, because of course I'm expecting a lot of information to be released right there. As always, I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys later, or like they say, in the Netherlands. Zie je later!